Hi HR Nation, welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today we have a super interesting guest, someone who I followed for a long time, so it's actually quite surreal to have him on the show. We're joined by David Mead, who's an award-winning author, speaker, and student of leadership. Welcome to the show, David. How are you?
Thanks, Chris. Doing great. Nice to be here.
It's so interesting to speak to you because, as I mentioned before we hit record, like some of your work was responsible for me quitting my job and starting this company, and in a good way. So,
I love hearing that, in a good way.
Yeah, no. No, I mean, I didn't mean I read David's book and quit my job immediately, but it was definitely influenced me in a way. So thank you. First and foremost, and fill everyone in a bit more. You know, you've done so much, so I probably would have had a 10-minute intro otherwise if I wrote it myself. But tell everyone a little bit more about yourself personally and your journey to where we are now.
I don't want to go back too far or take too long. I don't want to take 10 minutes either on this, but I remember as a kid, my dad did international consulting, right? And he used to stand up in front of groups and teach them how to do stuff. And it was boring stuff. It was technical writing, like how to write manuals. But I love that idea of being able to share information with people and sort of seeing the light bulb go on. And so I always thought to myself, maybe when I grow up, I'll do something like that. And so the first sort of real job that I had was as a corporate trainer for sales teams, right? And I would stand up in front of these groups for it was a 2-week training. It was when phone books were a thing. It was Yellow Pages.
I remember those days.
Remember those days. And I really got a lot of a sense of fulfillment and meaning out of that, to be able to share information and watch people go, oh, I didn't realize I could do that, or I didn't realize that was how that worked. And I love that sort of transfer of knowledge. What I didn't end up loving about that is because it was sales, turnover, as you know, is so high. And people would leave, 3, 4, 5, 6 months later. And I just felt like all that energy that I'd put in.
Or sometimes the same week. Let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. And it's like you get done with the training and they're gone. I'm like, oh my gosh, come on. All that time and energy we just put in for nothing. And so that was the one piece that was a little bit unfulfilling for me. But I always love that idea of how can I share information or give people something to think about that helps them to be a little better than they were the day before, to do a little bit better than they were the day before. And that is always something that's driven me. And so I sort of continued to pursue that line of work. And I happened to end up working for another sales organization as their director of training. And I was about a week into the job when they said, hey, we're having this, next Tuesday, we're having this evening event. We're having a guest speaker come in. Can you come? And it was after work hours, was an optional thing. This was right after I'd started my MBA program. And I'm that kind of nerd that never missed a day of school growing up. And so I was weighing this out in my mind and I thought, do I want to go to school or do I want to go do this thing and listen to this speaker? And I said, well, I just barely started at the company. I was a week in, and I said, I want to make a good impression. I want to, to know that I'm committed to this. And so I'll go to this thing and I'll skip school. Well, it turns out that guest speaker that they had, this was back in 2009, early 2009, was Simon Sinek. And this was back when he was speaking to tiny little startups.
Was that before the TED Talk?
It was right before the TED Talk and the book came out.
Okay.
Yeah. And so nobody knew who he was, but he shared this idea. And like you, Chris, like you mentioned before, we hit record, it just, the concept just stuck with me. And the thing, and maybe you've had the same experience and several of your listeners probably have, if you've listened to that concept, it's something we already know. It's like, oh, duh. Of course I should find meaning in my work. Of course I should do something with a purpose in mind rather than just doing it to make money or doing it to advance in my career. And so I basically stole that idea and I wrote it down into the training curriculum that I was writing for this little company where I was the director of training. And to make a long story longer, I ended up working part-time with Simon while I was still working at this company for about a year. And then eventually they didn't get it. I was trying to incorporate all these great things that I was learning working with Simon, and they didn't get it. And it wasn't clicking. And so they ended up letting me go because what I was doing is not something they wanted to pay for. And so I called Simon and I said, hey, I got some extra spare time. You got any more for me to do? And that began, about another 8-year journey of speaking, conducting workshops, and helping to spread these ideas through throughout the world, which has been amazing. And then in December of 2019, I stepped away from Simon's team to start my own thing, and to focus on a little bit more of how do we, with those ideas in mind, with that idea of purpose and that kind of thing in mind, how do we lead ourselves? How do we become the type of people who can stay true to that and really pursue that purpose with integrity? How do we build trust? How do we build relationships? How do we connect on a more human level and bring that stuff to life that's really important to us with other people around us? Because so often what we get stuck in doing is we think, okay, this is my purpose. It's all about me. And sometimes it becomes about me and we forget that it's actually about somebody else. Mm-hmm. And so that trust, that human connection, which is so lacking, I find in organizations nowadays, I'm working to help people build those connections, to build that trust so that they can build something meaningful that matters together.
Yeah, love that. And obviously that was how I came across you. For that whole journey to where we are now. So really excited to be chatting to you. Tell everyone about, you talk about in your work, the human leader. What is the human leader? Just describe that for everyone.
Well, let me give you some context as to where that came from. So every organization has their unique challenges, obviously. But what I've found over working with organizations all over the globe over the last decade or so is that when it comes to people, they all share a few common challenges, right? They share the challenge of retention, of communication, of discretionary effort, accountability, innovation. And all of these things to me really come down to relationship and trust, right? And if you think about it, if we don't have a good relationship with the people on our team, if we don't trust our boss, how likely are we to take a risk and throw out an idea that might not work? Right? How likely are we to take accountability for making a mistake? How likely are we to stick around long term, or if we do, to give more effort than we're paid to give? There's an interesting statistic out there. 80% of people quit their boss, not their job. Mm. So it really comes down to this element of human relationships. And all these things that I've just mentioned have a direct effect on one of the things that every organization cares about and focuses on so much, which is performance. And when we lack that trust and that relationship with the people that we work with, it decreases our individual performance. And as a result, the collective performance of the organization. And the organization can't have that sustainable progress that they're trying to achieve. And so this brings me to this idea of human leadership. How do we build that trust? How do we form that connection? And I find that what often keeps us from being able to build that trust or to maintain it when we have it is we experience so many unexpected things at work. We think we know somebody and then they throw us under the bus in a meeting, right? Or we think that we have our boss's support on this project and all of a sudden they pull it from us and give it to somebody else. And all of these things we go, what just happened? It's these unexpected experiences that put up this wall that make us second guess. Is this person really who they say they are? And we have so many of these unexpected experiences. And so what human leadership is all about is how do we learn to eliminate the unexpected, not unexpected situations. Those will always come up. We can't control, the external environment. What we can control is how we individually show up in those unexpected situations. We can give consistent experiences to other people, no matter what's going on around us. And that's what human leadership is really about. And so it focuses on 3 specific traits that help us to not put up that facade, to not be fake, to not lie and hide at work, so that we can form that connection and form that trust. And we can get into the details of those 3, but that's essentially what human leadership is how do we really be true, authentic, real, mm-hmm. in a measured and intentional way to be able to form those connections and that trust at work. Yeah.
And I think everyone listening can relate to what you said earlier about those moments to when you're like, really? Yeah. What happened there? Or
it happens all the time.
All the time. And you're right. It does result. I was thinking about past experiences while you were saying it, of where I've brought ideas to the table and I've been, knocked back or discouraged, and you know what, I'm no longer going to bring any ideas to the table. Exactly. Again, yeah. Or and I said those managers that you work for, that you do enjoy working with, that are those sort of authentic leaders, you will go above and beyond. You will work the extra hours, discretionary, and do that, or everything that you said Let's jump into those three areas. There's those three. What do you describe them as? Attributes or what do you?
Traits. Yeah, traits of human leadership.
Yeah, traits.
Yeah. So the three traits are honest, humble, and human. So 3 H's, easy to remember. But I go a little bit beyond the sort of the dictionary definition of some of these things. And I think about, again, the experiences that I have had myself with leaders and organizations, the experiences that I have had, whether leading in an organization or leading my family. And again, the thing that I want to point out is this is human stuff. It's not for those who have a role or a title or a position. This is just as this is applicable whenever we interact with other human beings, whether that be at work, at home, whether we are at the top of the totem pole or the bottom of the totem pole. It doesn't matter. All these things apply. These are human, just human-centered things. So honest, humble, and human, right? And honest is really about, for me, the crux of it is, do our words match our behavior? So if we say something, do we actually do it? It's not just about telling the truth. It's about actually following through on the things that we say. And if you think about these three things, before I dive too much more into honest, just to give you a little bit of a visual that I think helps with this, if you imagine honest, humble, and human as a 3-legged stool, right? A 3-legged stool only stands if all 3 legs are attached. If you take one away, it doesn't matter if you have the other 2. It will fall over. And so these 3 things really align with each other. They support each other, and you have to have all 3. And it's really interesting because if you think about it, a lot of organizations talk about these things, maybe not in these words, but as they're looking to attract new employees or keep the ones that they have, they often say things that align with these 3 things. They'll say things like, we're a values-driven company. We live our values. We're honest, right? We behave in alignment with the things that we say we stand for, right? That's the honest part. We're inclusive of everybody's ideas. Nobody is better than anybody else. We're always working together to innovate and come up with ideas together, right? We're humble enough to learn and to be open to other people's ideas, right? The humble piece. Human is such a huge one. Right? We take such good care of our people. Our people are our number one priority, right? We hear all of these things. And it sounds like the 3 legs of that stool are pretty solid. And it feels like, hey, sounds like a pretty good place to work. I think I'll have a seat on that stool. But the thing is, if I turned over that stool and showed you how it was actually put together, most of the time we find that it's just duct tape and gum. Right? It's not, they say those things. It's easy to say those things. But what happens when you add pressure to that stool? What happens when you have client demands, budgets, timelines, all of these things that put pressure on those things?
Or a pandemic.
It's not really solid. Say again?
Or a pandemic.
Yeah, exactly.
We saw so many companies who didn't live their values. All of a sudden, like during the good times is fine. But then when the pandemic comes along, all of a sudden, those go out the window.
Yeah, exactly right. And so, when you sit on that stool because you think it's solid and then you find yourself on the ground, trust is broken, right? Loyalty goes down, discretionary effort goes down, and you will be very careful that you probably won't go near that stool again until you can see through the behavior of the leaders who set the environment for the company that stool is strong.
Yeah.
So honest, humble, and human it's not just something we say. These are things that we have to follow through behavior. And people have to feel confident sitting on that stool. So with that 3-legged stool analogy in mind, recognizing we have to have all 3, diving into honesty. And again, all of these things that I'm talking about come from what I have seen from the over 200 organizations that I've worked with. I've had the opportunity to talk to employees, to see how leadership behaves. And I've experienced this stuff myself, as I'm sure many of you have. So one of the things that I find with honest that can break that leg of the stool, right? There are 3 things that I find do that. One is inconsistency in words and actions. Talked about that a little bit a minute ago. So what that might look like, for example, and it's in the simple things, right? One of the things that might look like is we tell our team we have an open door policy, but we tell them we're busy every time they come in and ask to talk. Right? There's an inconsistency in what we say and what we actually do. Second thing is an inconsistency in accountability. And that's when we try to shift accountability or blame onto something or someone else when it's something that we can really handle. So at work, again, this might look like if we're in a leadership position, somebody on our team comes to us to ask for some help working through a challenging conversation with a colleague. Maybe they're not getting along on a project. And because we have friendships with both of those people and we don't want to ruin that friendship, we send them to HR instead, right? Even though that's something we could step in and do. The third thing, and this is such a big one, is an inconsistency in focus. And this happens when our priorities, our vision, or our goals shift sporadically depending on what's going on in the current environment. So and I've experienced this so many times where I've started a project and it's all gung-ho, we're all going to do it, we're committed to this, these are the goals, these are the milestones, and then 2 weeks in, we're not doing that anymore. And it's so frustrating. And so, it's you hear your leaders say, this is our top priority, and you can't believe them because in a week, something's going to be different. And so this breaks this ability to trust. And honesty is directly tied to trust. If we're not honest, and if we don't feel that somebody is being honest, we won't trust them.
How do we hold ourselves accountable?
So I'll say two things. One is, I'm talking about the ideal, right? Honest, humble, and human. These are the ideals. I'm going to talk about behaviors that help us to become this way. Of course, we're going to screw it up. We're fallible. We're going to make mistakes. There is no way that we can get all of these things right all the time. I don't do it. You don't do it. Nobody does it. But that brings me to the second question, which is, because we're going to make mistakes, because we're going to screw it up, how do we hold ourselves accountable? And how do we take ownership when we fall short? So it's an interesting, another analogy that I use, right? When we do something unexpected, again, we're back to the unexpected moments, right? We try to do this stuff, we try to do it consistently, but when we create that unexpected experience and people are like, wait a second, you said this and now we're doing this? Didn't expect that, didn't see that coming. In that unexpected moment, we have a choice to make, right? And I use an analogy of the curtain. We can either hide behind the curtain, which is shorthand for lying, faking, and hiding. We can pretend that we didn't say anything like that. We can shift the blame onto somebody else. We can do everything we can to protect ourselves, our own interests, and our egos, and make it about somebody else. And I call that hiding behind the curtain. It's when we are not being open, we're not being transparent, we're not owning up to what it is that we did that caused a situation or a relationship to go south a little bit. That's one choice we can make. And when we do that, people can see it, people know, and it creates division, and it does not allow us to create that trust and connection. So that's choice number one. Choice number two, which is to your point, how we hold ourselves accountable, is we stay in front of the curtain. Instead of protecting ourselves and hiding ourselves so that we can have the short-term benefit of not, being wrong in the moment, we stay in front of the curtain. We practice humility, which is the next trait of human leadership, right? We own up to what we did. We talk about it. We create a space where communication can happen around that. We make a commitment to ourselves and to those around us. That's important, that we will try to do better. And then through the behavior that we do going forward, we prove that commitment to them. It's not about committing to ourselves. It's not saying, I screwed up again, I'm going to do better. It's actually admitting to our team in an appropriate way, right? None of this stuff is about oversharing. It's not about, laying all of our skeletons out on the table and saying, the reason that this happened is because I'm struggling in my marriage and this is happening and I had a fight with we don't have to say any of that stuff. It's what's appropriate for the situation, what's appropriate for the circumstance and the relationship that we're talking about. How transparent can we be to give the information and to give the context so that people know we made a mistake. We apologize for it. We take accountability for that, and we commit to ourselves and to them to do better moving forward. And then that's the hard part. Then we have to make good on that.
Mm-hmm. So what's the second part? So that's step one. So I'll say step one, yeah. One leg of the tripod. One leg. Okay, so let's go to the second one, which is humble, right? Humble.
And humility, first and foremost, is about dropping ego, which again, we all have one. We all sort of revert to that. We all sort of do that because it's natural to want to take care of ourselves. And that's fine. That's good to a certain extent. But for me, when that becomes dangerous or when that becomes a problem is when it's to the detriment of other people.
Yeah.
And so learning to drop that ego and recognize that we're fallible, that we're human, that we still have something to learn from anyone, no matter who they are, is a huge part of that. And again, when we're talking about behaviors, like we can talk about honest, we can talk about humble, we can talk about human, but it's hard to say, go out and be honest, humble, and human. Like, what are the actual behaviors? And so I've noticed, again, with humble, 4 specific behaviors that I have observed allow people to embody that trait. And the first one is the willingness to do what we ask other people to do. So I'll give you a simple example of that. When I was 17, right after I graduated from high school, I got a job at a bagel shop. Besides what I do now, it has been my favorite job. And I compare every single job that I've had, everything that I've done since then, I compare to that job.
Okay, cool.
Right? And the thing is, most people have that bagel shop job.
Yeah.
I asked this question, like, what has been your favorite job? Lifeguard, camp counselor, these babysit, like all of these things that make you no money, that give you no prestige, that have no bearing on your career at all, but we remember them for specific reasons. So one of the things that sticks out to me is the shop was on Main Street downtown. And at lunch, every lunch, we would get a line out the door, right, and up the sidewalk. And so we were slammed. We were always busy. And the guy who ran the shop, he would be the first one to come down from the office, put on an apron, and help us make food. He never a question. He was always there to support us. He always did the things that he asked of us, right? And so that willingness to do what we ask of others, it sends a very clear message that you're willing to kind of come down to my level, if you want to think about it that way, although I don't like to think of it that way, and do the same things that I'm doing. Because guess what? We all started there. And to be able to take ourselves back to support or help somebody who's where we used to be, it means something, and it means a lot to the person that you help.
Let me give you a story on that, which really pissed me off in my previous company. There was a rota, right, of a cleaning rota. This is a kind of a small business where basically it was once every day there was someone's responsibility to collect all the coffee cups of the tables. It's such a silly thing, but I'm going to say it because the fact that I remember it all these years later means it really annoyed me, and it annoyed everyone else. Yeah. So every single person in the company was on a rota. So you had your day, and then and no matter what level you're at, so chief marketing officer, everyone but the CEO.
Interesting.
Right. And it's one of those moments, right, where it was like everyone was expected to do it. Even, the board, the kind of members of our small board, including me, but the CEO, whose idea it was, didn't do it. And that really, I can't even tell you, David, how much I don't think he realized how much respect he lost. So he thought it was a great idea, but so the other senior members of the team, when he wasn't in the room, they would be furious, including me. It was just like the message it sends, like what you're saying, right? The message that it sends isn't like, for example, I used to work as a chef, right? And when we had crazy busy days in the kitchen and things were just piling up, every chef, including the executive chef, would then help clean the plates. There was one day where the dishwasher broke. And it was like the executive chef got involved and helped clean food off plates, right? And help the kitchen porter do that. And it was like, I remember being there being like, wow, that's amazing that the executive chef is sitting there cleaning plates, right? Doing like, you know what I mean? And that's the moment that I was like, this is really cool. This is a cool place to be, that the guy would do that. And my CEO in the previous company just lost so many points. Anyway, it's just such a silly thing.
Examples. And it's so funny because it was his idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
So, and here's the thing, and there's a balance with this, right? It's not that, a leader's going to spend their entire day.
No, I'm with you. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Exactly. They shouldn't be doing that. No. Yeah.
Right. But when it really counts, when it matters, when somebody really needs the support, it's the willingness to do it.
It's like when my old sales reps were like, yeah, we're behind on sales. We need to stay late. And then they go home. So it's like, whoa. And we're getting pizzas for everyone. We're going to stay late, and we're going to hit the deadline. And then they're gone at 5 o'clock. You're like, what? So we're all staying late to help hit your target. So you get your bonus. Cool. Right. We'll see you tomorrow. I think we're missing the third part of our tripod.
We are. Third leg, right? We're going to human.
So I said tripod now. It's not even I've gone from a stool to a tripod.
All right. Tripod, stool, whatever works for you. As long as it's got 3 legs, you're good.
Yeah.
A human leader is obviously human, right? And this is really about having a genuine care for people. And again, getting to the behavior side of this, what are some things that we can do to foster that human element in our leadership? there are four things. And what I found, again, through my experience is, and I've asked thousands of people this question, what type of, like, if you think about your favorite leader, the best leader that you've had, and I'll ask you, think of the best leader, one that pops out in your mind, the one that you remember for all the right reasons. Mm-hmm. What were some of their characteristics? What did they do? How did they behave?
The first thing that I thought of is they're just super authentic. Like, just, you know, like they would share if they're having a good day, a bad day, or like they would be very vulnerable with the team, and they would encourage you to be yourself. So you just felt like you didn't have to portray this version of yourself that you're not. You felt like you just be yourself around them. And that was huge, just to be myself and not have to pretend to be someone else was huge. And they were equally brought that same energy. Yeah.
Who would you say their focus was centered on? Themselves or you?
The team. Yeah, the team. Yeah, definitely the team.
Good. So it's this ability to reach out. It's this ability to see the human being behind the employee, behind the team, right? And that's what, and when I've asked this question to thousands of people, they'll say it in all different ways, but they all appreciate a leader who embodies this human element, that cares about them, that genuinely cares about the human beings in their charge, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about the behaviors that help us to become more like this, again, I've identified four. First is to connect on an individual level, right? We've all probably received the recognition where we got, you know, like a $5 gift card to Starbucks or whatever, like taped to our desk, you know, on our first anniversary at work. It's like everybody gets it. It means absolutely nothing, right? I had an interesting experience with this that sort of triggers this idea for me, which is a few years ago, I was on a remote team, and for my birthday one year, they sent me a really odd gift in the mail. It was a stick, just like a dry stick. And I thought, what in the world is this? It was a dormant tree that was meant to be planted, and it would grow into this beautiful, huge flowering tree, right? But the card that came along with it was what was the most meaningful part. And they said, you know, this tree represents our commitment to your growth and development and your stability here within the company. I thought,
that's cool.
That's amazing, right? And it felt like so personal, and they did that multiple times, not with a stick, but you know, the gifts that they gave were really thoughtful and really well thought out. And I'm not saying, again, we have to do this all the time, but in the times that really matter, is connecting on that individual level and really making sure that people feel seen. Second thing is to show people they're valued and valuable. Nobody likes to show up to work and have no clue how the work that they do contributes to the bigger picture. Nobody likes to come in and just punch a clock and just work on their computer and type stuff out. Everybody likes to see how their work connects to something else. So how do we show them that they're valued and valuable as human beings? Third thing is we take a genuine interest in other people's growth and development. So a lot of people have probably had this happen to them as well, where we want to grow. We want to advance in our careers. We want to go somewhere else. We maybe want to move departments. We maybe even move to a different organization that gives us a better opportunity. And how often when we go to our boss for a recommendation letter or for, you know, help in making that move, they say, oh, you're way, way, way too valuable for me. I can't let you go. Last thing under human real quick is I think one piece that we often forget about is to care for ourselves in order to be able to care for those we lead, right?
Yep.
If we're not recharging the batteries, if we're not taking time off, if we're not, you know, doing what we need to do to be at our best, there's no way we can show up at our best for others. We can't do any of these other things. A great example of this, I remember, and this was, you know, several years ago before technology was such a big thing at work, but I had a boss who every year in October, she would take a 1-week vacation to Hawaii with her sister. And during that time, she did not do a stitch of work. She didn't even take her computer. And when she came back, she was energized. She was like enviably tan. She was like, she had all this great stuff going on. She was so energized and recharged. And that naturally just fed back into the team, right? And in the sort of the meta level of that is it gave us permission to do the same thing. We saw her do it. And so when we took a vacation, we knew it was okay for us to just unplug and just recharge and be there too. And we have to do that in order to be our best for those around us.
Yeah, definitely a culprit of not doing that. The amount of time my team's like, just, you know, you just take a day off, like, or just take a few days off.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard. And you bring up a good point, which is, again, I mean, these are the ideal, right? Honest, humble, and human. These things are what allow us to stay in front of the curtain. They're the things that allow us to provide that consistent experience rather than being unexpected all the time.
Yeah.
But we're not perfect at it. And it's a constant practice. It's a daily pursuit. And, you know, we sometimes take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but the idea it's the trend, right? It's not measured on a single day. It's not measured on a single interaction or a single experience. It's the trend that's important.
Yeah. If there's like one daily practice that you think would really help everyone, what would that be? Like, is there like a specific daily practice you do or you've recommended in the past that have had the most impact for people?
Yeah. And I mean, it might sound a little passive, but we can't do any of these active things unless we have a really clear awareness of where we need help. So one of the practices that and again, I'm not as consistent as I should be, is at the end of each day, I'll take a minute and a half or 2 minutes, and I've got a little template for myself set up in a little journaling app. And I've got questions for myself, and I just give myself a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Did I do this today? Did I not do this today? And it just helps keep me aware of, did I show up honest, humble, and human? You know, was there an experience that I can draw from that I didn't do these things that I can do better, you know, and focus on that tomorrow? So I think awareness and that practice of awareness is such an important thing to be able to even know what to work on.
Oh, that's cool. So you have those 3 questions based around the 3.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. Yeah, that's such a simple way, but so that's what I was looking for, something super practical, because I was like, we're so in the thick of things sometimes. Yeah. Like just, you know, I'm like going 1,000 miles an hour in the company doing things that just having that moment of reflection is so important. Listen, before I let you go, first of all, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you as well. And I'm super excited for this next chapter. And I know you got a book coming soon, but we'll keep that secret for now. Everyone have to wait and patiently see. We'll have you back on when it's published as well. So stay tuned, everyone. Before I let you go, if there's sort of one parting piece of advice, what would that be? And then where can people check you out and connect with you?
My advice is be patient with yourself. This is hard stuff. And even though it's things that we know already. So, I mean, look, I'm not sharing any new information. This is stuff we all naturally know. And I feel like it's already within us. And sometimes it just gets a little buried. Right. And so exploring it, uncovering it, digging that up a little bit, and practicing these things, it takes time. It takes practice. There's no shortcut to trust. There's no shortcut to relationships. This stuff just takes time. So be patient with yourself. And if you have a bad day, don't give up and just say, oh, I can't do it. Just recommit to yourself, recommit to the people that you influence, that you lead, that you love, that you're going to continue to work at it and do better. So be patient. And where you can find me, a few places. The central spot is davidjmead.com. You'll find free resources there, links to other social sites, and lots of other good stuff.
Amazing. Also connect with David on LinkedIn as well. And for everyone listening, those links are already below. So click links below, connect with David on LinkedIn, check out the website and get in contact. But it's been a real pleasure, honestly, and super excited to see what you do next, and keep up the great work.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks.